good morning, and also good whatever time of day it is where you're at, afternoon, evening, and so on. So what's the title of what's the topic?
Reverse the motion?
Yeah, what did I say?
Reverse the motion?
Yeah, I did say that. I got to think about what to say about it. So reverse the motion. There's all kinds of motion happening. There's the motion of people talking to you, the news, your environment, your sangha, your relationship dynamics between you and your partner, your children, your friends, your enemies for that matter, or the people you have difficulty with. There's all kinds of things in motion. Don't need to point that out to you particularly. So when I say reverse the motion, it's pretty hard to do that. But it's a way of talking about it. So first, be really aware of the motions, and this is what we're doing. The way I teach meditation practice, as you know, just precisely this. Just a radical meditation. It never gets really radical. It gets kind of radical because we keep what? Fluffing it up, tamping it down, moving it over, evaluating, laying little labels on, well, this is, and that shouldn't be, but this should have, but not that. Don't do it. When I say don't do it, how do you don't do it? You don't do it by watching the way you do it. You have to address the confusion, the delusion, the difficulty, the passion, the aggression, the ignorance, and so on and so forth. So fifth, so sixth. Don't give up. Keep doing it. You aren't this particular path are not going to be much happening in the way of results. A result might come to you in the form of someone else saying, you know, I notice you don't interrupt me quite as much as you used to. That won't be a compliment. That'll be an observation. What was that title again?
Reverse the motion.
Reverse the motion. So look at the motion, and the motion if you're listening here on some level, you're probably doing some kind of a motion that slows way down when you get to the cushion. You come to the cushion. That's the motion. Watch that motion. That's not before you meditate. That's meditation. Watching movement, watching movement. I don't set aside something we call meditation in action. I don't teach that. I teach meditation. I practice meditation in action based on teachings, including Trungpa Rinpoche. And I'm not against that. If you have a teacher, if you have someone who's teaching who can work with you in that way and you want to do any kind of meditation action, please go ahead. But if you're listening to me, I say, keep it very simple. The last motion you should be watching that's a gross form of motion is the body moving towards the wall, towards the cushion. Sit down, bow to the cushion, bow to the community, bow to the world, and then turn around and sit on the zafu or the chair or the bench or whatever you're sitting on, and then begin to observe what moves, which can be anything from the breath to the diaphragm to thoughts about what you should have done before you got to the cushion, what you're going to do after you get through wasting your time on the cushion, because quite often that's what the ego mind is saying to you. This isn't working. Why am I doing this? Just because that old man said to do this? Probably not. I don't really have any followers here. I've been looking for them so I can kick them out. How do I kick them out? Push them around. And of course, I'm being silly, but I'm just saying I'm not going anywhere. There's nobody to follow. You need to observe whatever's moving in your mind stream. That mind stream does not belong to anyone. That's another way of saying everything is without a self, which was what the student talks addressed yesterday, some of them. Everything is without an identity. It doesn't mean it isn't there. It isn't brilliant. It isn't shining. It isn't knocking down walls or building walls. It just means there's no one doing that. It is a motive. It's like electromotive force, electricity. And I'm not an electrician, so I'm just using that because it showed up. The power of something moving. You can't even see that kind of move. You can't see electricity move unless it gets out and starts to show off in the form of lightning. So come to the cushion, watch your steps, come there, sit down, hold still. So when I say reverse the motion, it's pretty hard to do that. But if you endeavor to do that, what happens? You begin to become sometimes even painfully aware of how much motion is going on that is not obeying you. I mean, just because you can get the body mind to get up and go to the kitchen and open a box of Oreos and then have the self-discipline to put it back, maybe I won't eat those right away. Again, another silly comment, but it's like that. It's like we're working with our mind in very simple, mundane ways where we're little irritations that other people might not even know about that irritate us about the way we move through our world. You're not going to see too clearly how you move through your world unless you see how you move through your mind, because that is your world. You are actually looking at your mind. Don't believe anything I say. Don't disbelieve it. Don't look away. You heard me say that hundreds of times because it's important. Take my word for nothing. You can listen. I can give you some suggestions. And some people, if you're fully ordained as a monk, it's probably going to be a little bit stronger than a suggestion. But if you're not, I have students I've talked to for years and years that have no real commitment to me. Not formal anyway. I don't know. They might have one. Not interested in that. Don't need it. I'm not taking exception with any other teaching style. I just can't do this any other way. And I'm not doing it out of somebody's instruction, other than I couldn't do this if I hadn't had a couple of amazing teachers. So reversing that is just as I said, just a way of bringing your attention to how much something occurs, and we reproduce. We produce thoughts and ideas and comments and considerations about that analysis of it, and we validate that. We back that up with all kinds of logical ideas about what's up, what's down, what's right, what's wrong, what's correct, what's incorrect, and so on. Based on, we always have a lot of backup for everything. Logic is very handy, and reason is very handy, but you need to lead with your awareness, and the awareness doesn't know anything. The awareness does not think. The thinking process is great. It's like having a kidney that works, but don't try to make the kidney jump rope. It's not going to be able to do that. You can't convert this into that and this into that, even though some teachers teach that way. And if they do, and you want to do that, go find them. So what am I getting at about this particular topic? I'm always talking about the same thing anyway. Awareness, about awareness. It's not about what arises in the awareness. And that's so magnetizing and so seductive. What arises, regardless if it's a nice thing, uncomfortable thing, no matter what it is, it has a hold of us, and it wants our attention. It wants our attention because that's where it gets the nourishment for being somebody who's giving their attention. So the idea is to sit down and watch what moves. The idea is to receive whatever's moving. And the delicate area, when I say delicate, it's because it's paper thin, it's onion skin. It's it's not even feathers. It's like memories of feathers. It's that thin. It's barely there, but it is there, and it is a wall. And why is it why is it so wall-like? Is because thoughts are even more subtle. So when they run into that wall of consideration that masquerades as respect, then we turn it around, and it's barely noticeable. We turn around what was receiving, what was happening, the generosity of giving everything your attention, and we turn it into very, very subtle warfare. That's what the feather would probably say, because it doesn't want to be seen as being against anything. We're trying to cultivate something where we're okay with everything. Don't do that. Meet everything that moves. Meet everything that comes, positive, negative, and neutral. Find out who you are without a doubt. So you have no doubts. If you have doubts, you have work to do. And you could say, Do I have doubts? Well, yeah, I couldn't teach if I didn't have doubts. Might be a little bit of difference. If you ask questions, I can address that, but I can't teach out of that because I don't have any knowledge about it. Juju.
Juju Valley, when you just said, meet everything where it's at. It seems like my first reaction of meeting something is disagreeing with it or being against it. So how is that not meeting?
It is meeting it. Watch the agreement, watch the disagreement. Don't take exception. Don't start producing ideas about that. It takes if you understand what this is and you learn what this is, and when I say learn, it's not about acquiring knowledge, but you begin to understand with your direct perception of what this is, then you're no longer at war with anything. Even the most evil, terrible energy comes your way, not at war. This doesn't mean you won't punch them. This doesn't mean you will let them, to put it in story form, make very difficult karma for themselves by you trying to be a humble, kind, loving person to live up to some kind of stupid image of what that's about. Instead, you help them. You take that karma away from them. You be the evil one. Bam! Do I mean that? Not really. Don't do anything I say. Don't believe anything I say. Consider it. You can consider it. You just heard it. But I'm not authorizing anyone to hurt anyone or go into that territory. But I need to use that kind of an example to say that's what it may feel like to you. I can't really let this energy get out. It's hard. That's why almost everybody here is ordained or lay ordained or fully ordained. That's the vow. Return to the vow. You want help? Save all beings. Put others before yourself. If you put the most evil, difficult, horrible person, and we've got a lot of examples these days. I don't know if those words even work. Maybe insanity is better, but meet them where they're at. Don't chase them down. Don't go after them. Meet them where they're at. And that means you're going to be meeting them where they're at in your own mind, because it's very difficult to relate to something directly if you're thinking about it and analyzing it, judging it, even though you'll have all kinds of relative things backing up that, yeah, you're probably relatively right about this, but that may not be the kind of authority you need to interact with that while you're walking a spiritual path. You may need to do it in a more subtle, refined, gentle way, which can also have a very sharp edge to it if the causes and conditions are there where you can actually dance with the phenomena as it arises, as your own mind, as the other person's mind, and as your world, without concluding anything. As soon as you conclude, you might as well be putting on a blindfold. Go ahead.
It still looks like I meet everything with warfare. So I'm still confused how that's meeting everything.
Just continue. I know we've talked about this a lot. You don't, when I say don't, I might not say this to everyone, but speaking to you, people get to eavesdrop. I'm saying to you, don't fight with anything. And especially don't fight with warfare. Because if you try to stop it, that which is trying to not be at war is also that which is trying to be at war. And we have internecine struggles in our own consciousness, trying to be better, trying to improve. The fundamental misunderstanding is identity. There is no one. There's just anger. And there's no propeller behind it. There's no person. There's no identity. That's not something you believe. That's not something you disbelieve. And that's not something you have any proof of. All proof is all evidence is partial. A little bit. Just keep going. You're a young woman. Just keep going. Keep practicing. As long as I'm here, I will help you. You have a sangha, you have a strong sangha, you have a community. It's not thousands of people or hundreds, but it's a few dozen. Go ahead.
How does my constant warfare help others?
Killed anybody yet? So, when I'm saying that, I'm joking, but I'm saying because you've been here for a few years, living in a monastery, and you received Jukai, and you're working with those vows, you may be working with them in a different way than others. Your particular dynamics are different. We've talked about this a lot, so I can't say too much here without being personal, but I would say, you're doing it. You're just don't give up. Keep doing it. The fact you can even ask me those kind of questions tells me you're very aware of what's happening there. The thing is, the awareness of something doesn't reduce the abrasiveness of it. It could make it more powerful because you're, when I say not just you, but anyway, you're finally not going to avoid the negativity that you've been trying to change all of your life. You're finally going to be genuine, like the Vidyadhara said. Be genuine. It only took me several decades to understand what that meant by contemplating it constantly. Another question? Shoto.
Paraphrasing the idea of there's not a self, but it's just the anger. So if there's not a self, what is it that's having anger show up more frequently in some people than others?
Just causes and conditions. You can't trace it down because it's too complicated. It's just too, it's not that you can't trace this or trace that, but what happens, we're so anxious to conclude or control or do something that we conclude something, we call it evidence, and then we can, in our society, you can go to court, and if the evidence stacks up in a certain kind of way, you can kind of, get some compensation for that. But the way we're doing it on a spiritual path, it's not about collecting evidence. It's about directly perceiving, directly seeing whatever is occurring in front of us that has an apparent otherness to it. Directly see it. Same as looking at the situation that's arising that is triggered by things outside, the emotions. Someone does something where emotions are triggered, and just observe. That's just one more thing to observe. The noises in the street, the person walking down the hallway, CNN reporters, and the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and difficulties that are rising in your mind stream that masquerade as someone. So of course the thing that happens, we get tricked into thinking, because we think we're somebody, we get tricked into thinking we need to get rid of those feelings or straighten up in some forms of teaching, Buddhist teaching and other teachings. And teachers talk about doing practices that help you calm down. I'm not interested in you calming down, nor calming up. I'm interested in you seeing your true nature. And so that may, for a while, I'll get to you in a minute, for a while, that's going to look like an otherness that is called your emotions. And of course, that creates me and my emotions, the duality that is all over the place. So it seems to be necessary to really be responsible, not blame, the ability to respond to whatever occurs. And how do we respond? Just receive. The most profound form of generosity. Go ahead.
Did you say that the emotions are a quality of other?
They look like it, don't they?
I didn't until you said that.
Yeah, it's the otherness. Nobody owns anything. There are no walls of the mind anywhere. Those are illusory, and they're based on hope I can get over that wall, and fear that that wall won't hold back the demons. I say make friends with those demons right away. Go ahead.
Originally, I would have considered my emotions the subject part. So that's, if the emotions are other, what's the subject? That's
Same thing. The mind is trying to find a reference point. You don't need reference points. If you need a reference point, then it will show up. It'll just spontaneously show up, and it's like, I don't know, like a door handle. Doors without handles, not a good idea. I mean, it might as well be a wall. Does a great China wall have any door handles? Yes.
The talk title, Reverse Emotion.
Yes.
A lot of times our emotions become habitual.
Yes.
And when something's really entrenched, how can we begin to work with the solidity of that?
So in the sitting practice, just look at the trench, just look at the groove, just keep it as radical or fundamental or minimalist as possible. So, and that's, you can probably tell you're doing that because it's abrasive. Excuse me, because it doesn't feel good. Well, in meditation, then when you're up and moving around, interacting with people, again, just watch, insofar as you can, look at the texture of it. The texture tends to, it won't do away with it, and it could even increase the feeling, but it kind of depersonalizes it, because it almost needs to have opinions and ideas and judgments and concepts and evaluations flocking around it for it to actually look like a real mountain. Like birds, they kind of make it look real, because look, it's there, but that mountain is you created it, I've created it.
Can we go into our negativity without being negative?
That's the only way you can do it. That's the
How
only
do
way.
I work-
Because if you go in, well, you don't need me to explain that, then I won't.
Well, the question shows up is, so if I have a consistent negative characteristic or something that comes off a particular way,
Yeah.
out of fear, I make sure that doesn't show up, or I push it down. So how can I go into that negativity without it being externalized?
So the way you ask the question, you're already doing that. You're just not getting any, you're not getting any reference points from it. You're already doing it. Just keep going. It takes a while. This is why it's called mind training. It takes a while to, just say it very bluntly, depersonalize something that feels very, very personal. It feels like you, Jason, are having these emotions. And if you didn't have those emotions, then the Jason that you are would be, phew, relieved. But no, if you see through those emotions and see that those are unreal, then you have all the emotions of everyone you meet from then on, the whole world. Good luck.
When I am working with my emotions, I notice that showing up is that I'm working with them with the idea of what it would be like without those. Is there a way to work with that identity to create that is the one that doesn't have negativity?
Paraphrase your question.
In order to work with my emotions, I create another identity, or an
That's pretty
idea
sneaky.
of what things would be like if I didn't have those characteristics. And I'm wondering, when working with the negativity directly, is there a way to also work with that other identity that pops up with the relative relationship to working with negativity?
So the fundamental difficulty is that we think there is somebody. I think the emotions are there, and must be somebody here having the emotion. And there is, the emotion is there, the feeling is there, but it doesn't have any center. There's no self in the skandhas of a human being or anything, and there's no self in anything else. Everything is without a self. So for you to try to create some other person who's kinder, create a bodhisattva ideal, and by going to maybe looking at the 10 bhumis and try to see which one of those would be exemplify your particular part, if you even do that. I don't know if you have. But what was your question?
I think just distill down, how can I stop fighting with just being negative?
Just watch the fighting. Because if you, the fighting is there and the negativity is there, and it's especially if you've been meditating for 9-10 years, whatever you've been, and pretty strongly practicing all that's pretty humiliating to feel like you're going backwards, or to feel like all this meditating, all this time sat on the cushion, and yet there's still this wish or desire to be a better person who isn't negative. Is that pretty close? Yeah. And I'm just saying, just watch yourself do that. Don't fuel it with any kind of how much better you're doing, or don't fuel it in the other direction by how much you're failing, or put no reference point on it.
Can you have that negativity without suffering?
What is suffering?
I guess right now the way it shows up is if I feel depressed, like that is visceral and it affects everything I do. And
Okay.
so if I'm not trying to get rid of that, I'm wondering, can that still be there and not be just an oppressive feeling?
Well, it may still be an oppressive feeling, but there's no one having a feeling. So you're no longer concerned. And this is just a way of talking about it. I'm being conceptual about it. It's a little more subtle, perhaps in someone's perception of it, but there's no personhood having that. So beginning to see through that there's no one doing that. The way it's sometimes expressed is there is no bodhisattva and there are no beings to save. And so therefore you still have to relate to the world that is in horrible pain. And so the pain that comes for you is just it's fine. You're not inviting, you're not walking into a bonfire. You're not a martyr. If the pain goes away, fine. If the pain comes back, fine. I don't say that you're saying fine, but you just notice it because you've trained your mind to just receive what's there. No more warfare with anything. No more war. This doesn't mean, as I said before, that if somebody comes in your direction, that you're so not separate from anything. It doesn't mean you're all one. That's baloney. That's a misunderstanding. That's ego's language for trying to keep people from investigating the nature of the mind. But we're all one, aren't we? No, we are not all one. We're not separate. That'd be like the thumb accusing the little finger of not playing along.
Those feelings can be so consuming that I can forget everyone that's around me. And I'm wondering, particularly if you have a partner or in this situation or with our brothers and sisters.
I'm ready to respond. Forgetting every one around you, if you know what that is, this is awakening. There isn't anyone else but you. But it looks to the one on spiritual materialism thinks they're getting somewhere. They're going to be a Buddha or be a great, wonderful bodhisattva who's going to go into and join Kshitigarbha in hell and pull everybody out of the fire.
Is that different when the forgetting of everyone else is because you're only thinking about yourself?
You realize there isn't anyone else but you, and there isn't anyone else but them, and it's not separate. But it's scary to ego, especially to the ego the self-centered mind who is trying to pull themselves out of this labyrinth of samsara and into a spiritual path, and you somehow train their mind so they can see clearly, so they can stop adding to the confusion of others, and let alone their own confusion. It's difficult because the polarization is so simple. Plus and minus, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. The whole situation is not separate. And the non-separation goes so far that you feel like nothing has happened. You feel like nothing is happening. The passion, it's just, it's a sunshine and clouds and rainbows, storms and hail and thunder, peace and war. That's why I say don't go to war. Don't go to peace either. Don't go anywhere. Save all beings. How do you do that? Stop refusing them, objecting to them, and making them otherness. And don't go the other way and make them all, your followers. More?
Just one question that shows up is if there should be any going out to include, if I'm with Senchu or with somebody else and I'm having these feelings to just consider they're in the room as well.
Yes. Yeah. It's just it's called the middle way. If you're not really concerned with how you look to others and how you appear, making sure you function in a certain way so they won't think ill of you or judge. You're already judging yourself. We all are on some level. So you're already doing enough of that. So you don't want that kind of feedback from anybody particularly. So that being said, if you see there's no one here, I'm not saying there isn't somebody, but the one who's there is not a solid ongoing, is not threatened by anything. So therefore, even the negative feelings that come, it's like one of the practices, the Bodhisattva path is to, as you receive the negativity you've been fighting with, bring everybody else's in. All beings that are suffering in the way, the suffering I'm dealing with, give me everybody's suffering. Not particularly heroic because there are no medals. There are no heroes. There are no practitioners. Therefore, we practice. More? Give me some hard questions. Goes on.
Earlier, you said the phrase meditation and action, and that you used to do that, but you say, sit down and look at the wall, and that's meditation. Is there a difference between meditation and awareness practice?
Well, different concepts or words. So, I mean, if you look in Wikipedia, there's lots of meditations in there, lots of definitions for it. I use it because it's a simple word, but it's awareness. It's training the awareness to see anything that's moving in the awareness, and not only see anything that's moving there, but to see the very nature of awareness. Is there someone who's aware? Is there something that someone is being aware of? That's the very nature of the dualistic framework. And the politics of experience go wild in that area. Trying to get right and wrong and up, and we shouldn't, they shouldn't. You can't have a conversation without being drawn into someone's polarities, which they may think are just true and untrue. They don't realize that they have opinions about things. Interesting thing about opinions. More.
So sometimes you say, go to the texture, or look at the collar.
I do.
We practice different forms.
We do.
So what's the difference between awareness practice with those things and meditation and action?
So as I said, I'm not going to stop someone from trying to be aware as they're vacuuming the floor. But I'm interested in creating the sitting practice, slow everything down and use that form as a way of sharpening the blade rather than try to sharpen the blade in the middle of chopping vegetables. Pardon me. So I don't think I covered the other part of your question. So you said awareness, meditation.
It seems like sometimes though it seems like you could use the phrase meditation and action for looking at their collar or doing the forms.
You could. But the Han and Bell and the sutra practice, that is a form. That is a stylized or a scheduled or timed or structured meditation and action that we all participate in. But there's still a lot of movement in there. There's personality moving around. It's about being aware of the personality, not getting rid of it. I didn't spend 4 years in the Marine Corps to find out what that kind of form is about. Control and the whole Zen tradition. I'm not saying everybody, but quite often in Zen tradition, because of the macho situation of the culture, they're about controlling people, yelling at them if you can't function as a person. You have to, you're force fed the teachings. Not incorrect. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I don't do it. And it was probably very necessary for centuries to teach it that way, just because of the cultural context that these teachings arose in. It's different now, different situation. Go ahead, Shisho.
I wanted to go back to Junshu's question. In the context of dependent origination, how can we, or what do we produce in order to help others?
It's a good one. So if you are watching what is produced by others, and others, their language, their talk, their confusion, the appearance of whatever's happening with them, and you're also receiving and you're observing what is being produced in your own mind, not only as spontaneously coming out of your karma of just being a particular living being, your karma from the 18th century or wherever, and also the production that is happening triggered or spontaneous that is coming out of a reaction to what anything they're saying that turns off the receiving part of awareness into the production. And that production may be, you may never say anything to them, but you might have ideas that are kind of judgmental about them. And it's not about getting rid of anything. It's about seeing that you're actually, in a very subtle way, you're producing something on that. So the way you can help people, simply put, stop meddling with them. won't correct anyone. I sometimes say, when people say, well, I want my husband to meditate, or I would like to teach my children. I mean, it depends on who it is. I might not be super rude, but I also might say, mind your own business. Let them do what they want to do. And if they see, they have eyes, they're looking at you, they're watching what you're doing. And quite often, if you're a meditator and your spouse is not, and you don't calm down or cool off or become more peaceful, they're right after you trying to find out. I thought all that meditation was going to help you be more peaceful and stuff, and you seem to be more angry than you ever have. Misunderstanding. So what do I say? I'm going to say it over and over again. Make them drag it out of you. Promote nothing. Buddhism, this spiritual path, as far as I'm concerned, is not for sale. It's not to be promoted unless somebody brings their desire or their wish. Something has happened in their karma where they say, I really need to train my mind. I need to find out what this is. I need some help. Not just a therapist, psychiatrist, or anyone else. And again, don't misunderstand me. I think those are, who can't do that. Not everybody's going to do this. So some people really need a therapist. Some people need a psychiatrist. Some people just need to jog. They need to do whatever they need to do. And so I wouldn't interfere if someone had a different idea about how to work with their mind. Some people, we have a yoga studio over here. People come and practice yoga when Senshu lets Chiazan go and practice yoga. But it's not about promoting it. Some people really need to work with their mind in a way that's very direct, working with the body. So did I miss, was I too far away from the response that you feel like would be helpful to you?
Chishavami, yeah, I understand a bulk of what you said, Sokuzan, about receiving being a very key part of this, helping. But when, let's say the example you gave of somebody then is trying to extract out of you, okay, what is this meditation, or what do you do, or whatever, then how do you produce? Again,
Yes.
respecting imagination.
I got you. And so what I would say is it's different with each person. Some people, as I say, make them drag it out of you. Say, well, just answer what, if they ask you a question, respond, but nothing else, no elaboration. If they say, well, how does that help you? And it would be different for each person and depend on who it was asking. If you're clear about what their dilemma is, and then you're probably pretty clear about what your own is. You might say something as simple as it might be even somewhat difficult. You might have to actually be honest and say, I'm not sure yet. I don't know. And say, well, you've been doing this for a couple of years and you still don't know. And then, it depends on you. If they came that direction, if I was in that direction, I would say, well, I don't have to know what's at the end of this path. I just know I'm on this path, and I'm not really sure what I could respond to that would be fundamentally helpful to you. And then if they take that, and then if they pry or get more nosy about what you're up to, then it might be time to share that, but always do it in relationship with them. As Trungpa Rinpoche said a long time ago, the best relationship is no relationship. Contemplate that. That cannot be explained. You can't explain that.
Right. Chisho, thank you. That's kind of how I was concluding that help, actually, I wouldn't know if I'm helping or not.
Yeah.
Wow.
You won't get any thank yous. Well, you might, but they're just, that's just being polite. People thank me all the time. I know they don't mean it. So
Sure.
what you would do is, however someone shows up to ask you questions, then you would just respond with how they're phrasing the question, or so you can see more deeply into what they really want to know. They might just want to know, what the hell are you doing this for? Because of that, because of their interest in you and your dynamics, and they've seen, for a long time you're a Boy Scout, and then you went in the Army, and then you lived down in Mexico for a while and became an exchange student, and that will just, and all of that is, they're carrying that identity around with them. So when they ask you a question, suddenly you're practicing Buddhism, you're practicing meditation. That might be pretty confusing for them. So their particular karma, their style, their happiness or difficulty with their life or whatever the first noble truth, of course, is life is suffering. A lot of people don't see that. They have it covered up. Just like I think Shoda was saying, and Shoda's a fully ordained monk, and said when he first heard that, didn't you say that you didn't think you were suffering? Yeah. So sometimes you need to be reminded. And it's not nihilism, it's just the truth. But people can live their whole life and have suffering, have difficulty, fight with their spouse, but just have some other activity that keeps them from really looking deeply into that, and right up to the point where they're, 65 years old and die, and without really ever seeing what it is to be a living being outside of Buddhism, just to find out who this is, what this is. It's astonishing. But it's astonishing, not because it's contrasted with something that's ordinary or simple. It is both ordinary and simple and astonishing at the same time. All the dualities collapse. You have no reference point anymore. The whole idea of the bodhisattva is for someone who's dealing with duality. It's not someone who sees reality. Am I making any claims? Of course not. Why would I do that? If I start doing that, I might get followers.
There are a few questions on YouTube. The
Go
first from Semi.
Who?
Semi,
S-E-M-I.
M-I.
Okay. Semi?
Is the ego the one that produces?
So the production is attributable to the identity somewhat, and quite a bit, and depending on the situation. It's very much dependently arisen. So there is ego is unreal. So it doesn't matter what it does. But if that aspect of the consciousness that has bled into, for what to use that kind of a metaphor or image, bled into the belief in somebody, in the Yogacara tradition is called the seventh consciousness, then that gets very strong and very real and seems very real. So it seems necessary to not so much get rid of it, but to see that it has no credentials. There's no credentials there for it. Did I miss the question? Semi? Paraphrase yourself. Go ahead.
2 questions from Joseph.
Joseph.
What is the middle way between your teachings that I put into practice and your teachings that I don't put into practice?
That's your business. I endeavor, whether I do or not, I just do the best I can to meet people where they're at, whether they're Buddhists or whether, if you've been around me very much, I don't promote, other than I might say train your mind if you're having difficulty, but I don't promote being a Buddhist, sewing robes or any of that. You guys have to do that if you even want to. So I would say, Joseph, I don't think there's any difference. If you think there's difference, then maybe you should look closer at that, because it all looks the same to me.
His next question. Is it still genuine to consider you my teacher if I also follow teachers and teachings that strongly appear to conflict with you and yours?
Well, it might be more difficult for you. I'm not against that. Do whatever you want to do. People that are ordained begin to do that, then I would question it. Not because they're doing something wrong, just because it makes it confusing for everybody. Then I might as well leave. I just won't be here anymore. I'll go do something else. So in your situation, Joseph, I would say you should do whatever you want to do. But if you're following this teacher and following that, the linear quality might work okay. You go from one teacher to the next, but to try to do them all at once, and then take your own position on which teacher is right. I like what Thich Nhat Hanh says here, but Sokuzan doesn't say that. But Sokuzan has some good points. I mean, that one point, what was that one point he made that was such a good one? Don't do anything unless you have to. Some people just love that because they wish they had thought of it. Which of course, everybody's thought of that. So no, there's nothing to correct there. No, you can do whatever you like. So you tell me what. I don't produce students. I can't. I'm nobody unless I have a student. I mean, as far as being a teacher, I can't teach unless somebody comes and shows up with a question. Just like Joseph, just like your question, I'm allowed to fundamentally respond to you as a teacher. And what I'm doing is the way I understand you, and having met you and practiced with you, I would say you're fine. Keep doing whatever you're doing. Shoro.
Do you use our projections as credentials to help teach?
Give me an example of what do I use your projections? I mean, like, I have a little bag of everybody's projections. No, silly. I know. Okay, so do I look at the way you're projecting, and then do I react to you, or fundamentally operate in tune with that preconception so that I can better teach you somehow?
Yeah.
No. No, it's just a vow. It's not personal. It's just a vow. And so anything could happen. I make no plans. I mean, it's even having this, doing this order of immediate light. It's like I downloaded that from somewhere. So it wasn't my idea.
Geez, Undyne, how are your doubts different from my doubts?
There's no doubter over here. The doubts are really, really intense, but there's no one who doubts anything. So the doubts are just dependent years, and they're coming from, I don't know where this karma came from. I don't even how I got it. Who built this? I don't know how I got here. I don't know how this turned out the way it did, because 20, 30 years ago, it didn't look like this was going to happen. So I have no idea. But everything I had when I was, I'm still a thief. I still want to take stuff that doesn't belong to me. I don't. I don't think, have I taken anything lately? It's very tempting when you go in a hardware store.
But we don't do that now.
Tools, pliers, screwdrivers. Yeah, but we don't do that these days. So the COVID blessing. So that was I'm just saying that I'm using it. It was just really painful for me when I was young, because I had kind of an impulsiveness. There was one, and I had nobody I could talk to. And if anybody, the way my parents were very, ordinary kind of discipline, where they strike you if you do something that's wrong. So it was really difficult. There was no help for that. Yes.
The doubt that you're describing from in your consciousness without a doubter, is there content?
Is there what?
Content.
Yeah, but it's not separate from the space in which the content occurs, if you want something real philosophical.
Is it, well, maybe a simpler question, is there?
There's a simpler one. Go ahead. I like that laugh.
I like yours too.
Oh, yeah, your laugh is kind of, and my laugh's more like, mine's kind of more masculine, right? Right.
Is there
Yes.
a story or content to what arises that feels or appears as doubt?
That appears as doubt.
You said you have doubts.
Yeah.
And we have doubts, but yours is different. There's not
Well,
doubts.
they're just doubts, but there's no one, no one who's having them, who needs to get rid of them, who needs to have no doubts. Even though I use the idea of certainty, but it's not something that goes beyond. It's not separate from doubt. All the polarities. I don't know how to say it any more clearly than if you find one thing, you name anything, dharma, any dharma, it'll have an opposite. And realization, all those opposites, to say it descriptively, collapse into each other. And you can't find right or wrong. You can't find success and failure. You can't find life and death. You can't find it. You can't find it. You can't find it. And so that's why it's so terrifying to ego to run into the dark hole off to the side. It wants to go somewhere else, and maybe it should. I send people into the light all the time. Not ready for the darkness. Go ahead.
In your consciousness. Well,
Be careful.
I know,
You're talking about my consciousness.
Can't even
Yeah. Okay.
say
Let
it.
me
So
relax
when
here a little bit.
Feels
Okay.
like doubt is there.
Feels like doubt. Okay. Got it.
Do stories that seem associated with that pop in the
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah, they do. Further question? I can say it another way. And this might be difficult, but nothing's changed. If it had changed, it would be relative, and then it would change back. If you die, you're dead. But you're going to come back. If you think you die, then you're going to come back. It's the duality, Advaita. Non-duality there isn't any other thing. There isn't anything else anywhere. It just looks like it intensely, and it's an incredibly strong. It's called delusion, and this is what the Buddha looked at. He didn't look at enlightenment. He looked at the delusion. He looked into the garbage. He looked into the palm of his hand and saw the Buddha. You can do that. You can do that. Go ahead.
If nothing happens or nothing happened, is there a contrast you could point to when there was a doubter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more fretting about it and worrying and then feeling sad or guilty or trying to figure out how to change or how to act different and be different or that's how I met Trungpa, because of suffering, intense anger and suffering. And by the time I met him, I'd gotten the stealing to a minimum. I was still stealing from a factory I worked in. Don't tell anybody, because maybe there's no statute of limitations on that. They can come and, how about all those screws you stole? So is that, am I responding to the question in a way that you're asking it?
I have another question.
Go ahead, please.
So how can you talk about that contrast and also say that nothing's happened?
Because the happening and nothing happening are also not separate. Also, this is what this Anjali or Gasho is about. This and that, this. It's just a physical gesture that says respect, or it says not to. Go ahead.
What to use the idea of roche or one taste, what creates the illusion of the multiple tastes?
Preferences. And it's not that the preferences aren't fueled by dependent origination. I mean, we're not saying that the smell of the lavender and the smell of cow poop should be treated with some kind of equanimity or something. No, you see the difference, but you see what the difference is, but you also realize they're fundamentally get their meaning, their nature, their presence from each other. I'm just picking that out because it's a big contrast in terms of fragrance, but it's true with everything. Buddhas and sentient beings are not two different things. But the sentient being can stumble around in samsara lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Are there separate lifetimes? I don't know. I have no idea. Not interested in that kind of proof. I'm not writing a book about that, but I also don't look away from it. I look at it all the time in myself and others if I have their permission. Sir.
Is another way of saying that that polarities collapse that you bring up, is that like looking at white and not forgetting about black?
That's pretty creative. Ask it the other way around. Looking at black and not forgetting about white.
Is that like looking at black and not forgetting about white?
No. Stop. Are you trying to confuse me? It's a good, I understand what you're saying, but there's no particular response that would be direct enough to fundamentally help what is behind that kind of a question without entering that circus tent that you've just created in order to ask it. You follow me? Yeah. You think too much. Don't stop thinking too much. Just be aware of how much you think. Don't correct anything. Fix nothing. Nothing is broken. You disagree, right? Junchu thinks Shodo should be repaired. Well, that's what you've been working on. Yeah, a couple of years now of that.
Shokubowing.
Yes.
We have 2 questions in the chat box.
Go ahead.
First one's William Murray.
William.
No one is here and no one out there. What is this?
Again, please.
If no one is here and no one out there, what is this?
Well, with that, it's an illusion. But the thing about an illusion doesn't mean it isn't here. It just means that what you're seeing is unreal. It has no fundamental reality to it. And because if you just look at the 3 marks of existence, which are junior monks were talking about yesterday, that everything's changing. Everything is, nothing lasts, nothing. You can't find a single thing that has any duration that says, oh, it's going to be there forever. And if it's going to be there forever, like you say, well, space will be there forever, but it has no status. You can't. The only way you know it's even there is something else moves in it. And even that's illusory, because what is moving in the space is not separate from the space itself.
Shoka bowing. Next one's from Andrea DeSonia.
Andrea.
Pronounced that correctly.
Good.
I find that when I occasionally take an instant dislike to someone, it is because they remind me of myself. Being in the same area as someone who reminds of myself is difficult. How do I interact with these people?
Stay away from them. Don't OD on anything. Train your mind. Stay away from them. And you can do a little bit depending on, there's all kinds of other considerations. I mean, if it's a family member or relative, you might have to, go into that environment occasionally. But don't try to do it so that you'll think better of yourself. No improvement. Just a misunderstanding. You can benefit from listening to an old man who spent 3 decades trying to improve. You can benefit from that. Don't bother with it. Find out who you are. If you need to practice tantric practices, come and see me. I'll help you. Or go see a lama. Then you get the true thing instead of just something that some old man made up. I mean, it's so different with every person. Some people may need to do some kind of creation completion practice where they're doing what's called deity yoga. May need to do that. But most of the people I meet can just sit down, hold still, and there's enough creation going on. The completion's what's necessary. Sit down, hold still, watch what moves, watch the whole world just collapse and come back and collapse and come back over and over again. And as far as your person you're having difficulty with, if I were to talk to you more about it, I might say something more specific because of, if it's like a brother or something, or if it's just a neighbor. If it's something you can keep your distance, find something else to sharpen the awareness on, rather than try to do it with trying to sharpen it on something that's just way too rough or way too slippery or way too any of those textures. Don't do it. And then another way that you could address that is, what is your motivation for doing that at all? Look at your intention. Your intention, a lot of times if you look at the intention, and if you're a meditator, which I know you are, sit down and you'll see that the intention might sneak up on you. You might say, oh, I just want their approval, even though I don't like them. Even though I'm uncomfortable around them, I want them to approve of me some way, or at least, something along. It could show up lots of different ways. Further questions? Go ahead, Sokuzan.
So Sokuzan bowing, you were talking to Chazon about a bodhisattva identity.
No.
And sometimes you speak about manners. It seems like manners to me. Is this the practice of morality or Shila?
Is what?
Is practicing the bodhisattva's identity an example of Shila?
Yes. And Sokuzan, that's going to show up so much differently with each person. So that's if you study that, and you study the way, not only the way I talk about it, but the way whatever you've read and however you look at that, those As Kobun Tinaroshi told me many, many years ago, you don't take precepts, you observe them. It's only direct teaching I got from him that was in the form of words. I got a lot of other direct teaching that was not words.
Soker and bowing, when does it go from practicing morality to trying to be something that you're not? Bowing.
All the time. Doing it all the time. Don't agree. Don't agree. Don't disagree, and don't shut down. And that way you'll begin to see the true nature of the phenomena that are arising as your ideas, your thoughts, your thought patterns, your conclusions, your opinions, your vow. Watch what's moving in the space without necessarily attaching to it. But if you do attach, don't detach. You probably will not hear me say very often, maybe once every 100 times I have the impulse to do that. Just let go. I don't say that. I say, watch how you hang on. Because if you ultimately needed to let go, if you see very clearly the way in which you're entwined with some particular thing, you see it clearly, it just falls apart because it is maintained through your agreement or your objection or your ignorance. It's maintained through the three poisons. And if you try to, you're just going to war with something that may fight back, may not, but probably won't unwind. That snake has to wind of its own. It just has to unwind itself. And how does it do that? You see that it's unreal. At the same time, it sucks. Go ahead.
A question from Robert Switek.
Robert.
Does dispassionate movement provide for awareness in the area of suchness?
Repeat that, please.
Does dispassionate movement provide for awareness in the area of suchness?
Damned if I know. That's a big one. If it does, then that's what happens. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't happen. But in either case, it's suchness. But it's only suchness as it is. It's not suchness as you understand suchness. If you understand suchness, you have work to do. When I say work, there's a wall, there's a cushion, there's a teddy bear. Let me introduce this teddy bear. This is Rumi's teddy bear. This was my mother's, and then I located it, and now it's Rumi's. And this is called, the name of this teddy bear is so-and-so? Huh? As? And so. And so is Japanese for teddy bear? For circle. Here you go, and so. So we're past our time, but I can answer another question if anyone has one. Yes.
One more online.
Go ahead.
From Jeremy Stout.
Jeremy Stout. Go ahead.
The sheer loneliness of practice, particularly without Sangha, how to keep moving forward.
Read that again because I didn't catch the first part of it.
The sheer loneliness of practice, particularly without Sangha, how to keep moving forward.
Well, I'm pretty biased in this area. There's a Sangha here that I talk to every day. And these days, the COVID season has brought about a situation where you can hook up on Zoom. I don't know, is that available on the website? Or if you go to our website, sokukoji.org, I think that's all you have to do. And just go there, and then you can connect with you or one of you guys. And there's no fee for it. I mean, you should send us all of your gold bullion, of course, but you can connect up with the community, and we study every day at noon. We study 3 days, 2 evenings a week, a Monday and Tuesday, and then some other connections with other Sanghas here and there. And also a really good one is Susan Piver's every weeknight at 6 o'clock. I talk for about 15 minutes and give some instruction, and we meditate. And then there's other, Susan has other teachers on there. I don't know how many. Does anybody know how many? I mean, Kevin's on there some, and Susan's on there, but so yeah, and then that might be a way that would help you at least sit down and study the Dharma with others. We've been studying Tuesday nights. We've been studying Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, for probably 10 years, 8 years, 9 years, longer. You don't know.
That's Kelly Taylor. This is when she showed up, we started on Tuesday night.
Oh, that's when we did it? Okay. Well, I guess what I'm saying by that is maybe not in this monastery, in this situation, but in some kind of a study group for, I started studying that with a group in 1974, I think. But yes, you can connect that way, and that may help some. I don't know where you're located. And with the whole COVID thing, it's kind of hard to know when this is going to turn around, but it's looking better. But at some point, you just come here if you want. Or there's other sanghas just on the internet. There's everything out there, and if this situation sounds good, then check it out. Not for everyone, but we study eight or nine different texts.
8 or 9 study periods and quite a few texts.
Yeah, so 8 or 9 study periods, and some of them we double up on. Myth of Freedom, I think we do twice. So it's good to get a PDF or the book itself, but you don't have to. We read very slowly. So that may help you. And the other one is Face the Wall. Do a lot of it. We'll dedicate the merit now.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi fu shi son bu sa mo ko sa mo ko ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions of the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.